All right, it's August 26th, Saturday in the Wood Gym, about 11, and I cannot tell you guys how happy I am to have one of my best friends. You can't have like 8 or 9 best friends. We had a big argument about that. You have like a best friend, but there's people I could count on one hand, and Brian Debusk, my guest today, is here. Brian, how the hell are you? It's been a long time.
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for the invitation. It is wonderful to be here today.
He is so humble. It's awesome. You know, Brian and I go so far back. I tell people stories about us, and all good stories, weightlifting stories, and they really don't believe them. But I guess I got to thank you for my marriage. Yeah, that was you said no. I was going to go to Vegas. And you and Liz Debusk at the time, you were like, no way, we're gonna throw you a wedding, and it was at your father's guest house, and it was beautiful. I think Pete signed off on my marriage certificate, and I think that's where.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember it vividly.
Yeah,
and it's an incredible time.
No, and you've been there. We don't have to go on there, but you've been there for me through several hard issues. And Brian and Bruce Wilkerson are the guys that or always ring the bell for me all the time. And I just, on air, just got to thank you for that. And I appreciate our friendship that we've had. And Brian's one to always, it is 1 Corinthians 13 in the Bible, which Brian knows, but he's a guy that if I'm doing wrong by something, he'll call me out and take me to the side and go, hey, let's not do that or whatever. And I always appreciate that. And it's never anything that's harmful. So welcome to the show, man, and welcome to the Wood Gym. And like I said, at the Wood Gym, as Brian was talking pre-air before we got on, is what do you try to promote on this? And it's type A personalities, guys that are always thinking about getting better when they go to sleep and waking up, trying to improve. And Brian Debusk is the Harrison Smith of business. He's everything that you want to be in a man, in my opinion. And I'm just gracious to have you as a friend, my man.
Well, first of all, thank you. And I had no idea that was coming. So thank you.
Well, I mean, I get emotional as I get older. And
you're going to get me all
I know. You know me. I'm the feeler guy, and Brian's the thinker guy. And we've had some good stories, but we're like Mutt and Jeff. I'm the dumb one. He's the smart one, and it just works all the time. We're like peanut butter and jelly. It just goes.
Well, actually, yeah, I totally agree. And now that we're reminiscing, I don't know if you remember the first time we met. You were at the you were off of Kingston Pike,
Martinwood Drive,
and I remember Richard Henry had introduced you and I together. Mm-hmm. You and I, and I came out, and maybe I was late, maybe 10, 15 minutes late, something like that. And man, you want to look at just getting the stink eye. I mean, you could tell he did not like me or the ground I walked on.
And it was Jim Shipley, Brian Denham, our whole group. Yeah. And I was like, Shipley, I said, this guy tries to call me all the time. I was like, I don't know what he wants. He goes, what's his name? I go, Brian Debusk. He goes, dude, it's Brian Debusk. You got to bring him in. And I was like, I don't know. And he was like 10 minutes late. That's when the place was much smaller. The doors were locked. The blinds were closed. And I had a sign, training session do not step in. And he knocked at the window, and I'm like, dude, you're 10 minutes late. That's when we had Herman Survivor construction boots on and just powerlifting, flannel shirts, big Brian Denham, everything. And I go, you late? You missed. That's when that was pre-Ashland. So I was like a little bit harder. My oldest daughter, you know how it gets when you have them. And he knocked on the door again, and I opened it up, and he had 10 100 bills flashing. I'm like, let's go. You're welcome. Let's get in. You got it. I remember that. And it was love after that, wasn't it?
Well, what triggered that? Richard and I had started working out, and we had good intensity in the gym, but I was a little stuck. He was getting stuck just on the basics, bench, squat, all that. And I remember saying, what do we do to take this thing to the next level? Where do we go next? And that was when he made the introduction. He made the connection.
That's right.
And, even though it wasn't in the Wood Gym as we know it, this really was, from my experience, this really was the start of the whole Wood Gym experience.
Yeah, that's what Chad says, too. Like, it's not the Wood Gym, it's Petrone and what that is, and then wherever that goes, right?
Yep. And I remember it's just so incredible because you think that you have good intensity, you think that you're doing the right stuff, but when you come into this environment, you're surrounded by other people who are doing. I mean, I still remember the first day we did lower body. We literally squatted till we threw up.
Yeah.
I mean, that was sort of a tradition. It was a rite of passage.
Yeah, it was 4 sets of 225 for 25 reps.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, that's funny you say that. See, gosh, my mind is, I was thinking like 2 or 3 weeks ago of like the stuff that we did to what you could do now.
Yeah.
And you're going, okay, I passed that chapter. That's not coming back. We just shift over. But B, I got to ask you, I asked all my guests on here, everybody and anybody that's been on here, you're one of the smartest guys I know, and you don't brag about that. It's so funny. All my great Petrone guys, they don't brag on their strengths. They really just self-deprecate their weaknesses and laugh at it because they have a self of confidence walking in, and they're not full bravado. So they're the opposite of what I've been talking about the last month of all my labeling of Psych 101. And Brian doesn't need to tell you how smart he is, like Harrison Smith doesn't need to tell you how good he is. But when did you know that you were different?
It's a great question. I actually do know. I was 11 years old. I had, we had a family-owned business that it started when I was about 6 years old. And we had just invested in a TRS 80, a Radio Shack TRS 80 computer, Model 1, Level 2 computer. And I saw this thing at the office out in Powell. And I looked at this and I thought, I'd always been a little interested with chemistry sets, erector sets, science, all that. But I looked at this thing and I thought, this thing could change my life. And I remember they wouldn't let me touch it. I mean, literally would not let me put a finger on it because back then, these things were crazy expensive and we used it to print our payroll. So if we messed this computer up, nobody got checks. And at the time, Paul Hodges, who was the number 2 guy at DeRoyal, he gave me the book, the instruction manual on this book. And he said, look, I'll let you touch the computer. You can be supervised, but you got to read this whole book first. And I remember taking this book. I took it to Beaverbrook Country Club, to the swimming pool. I remember taking it to family dinners. I read it when I got up in the morning. I read it when I went to bed at night. And it really, at that point, I thought, this is an inflection point in my life. I knew this was going to be different. And fell in love with computers at 11, started programming, actually wrote some commercial software for Charles Holland, a company called QualPro right here, off Oak Ridge Highway, or off of Pellissippi. Mm-hmm. And we were actually I had moved over and was doing Fortran code. And he was writing quality control software for automotive companies. And so I was doing X-bar and R charts and control charts, all the Edward Deming things for Dr. Holland. It was just a great experience.
He wrote a book, didn't he? Is that Charlie Holland? Is they go to CAK?
They do. They do.
They live right down the street.
Yeah.
Hardin Valley.
He's still a dear friend to this day. He's an LMU board member with me. Wow. And I sort of grew up with him and his son Ken and watched them build that business.
I remember Paul Hodges just from being over at DeRoyal getting introduced by everybody.
Well, Paul was an attorney. He was actually the patent attorney on the first patent DeRoyal ever received.
That's right.
And then later on came to join the business.
He passed away.
He did. He passed away. It's been some time.
Yeah, he did my patent on the Petrone bands.
That's right.
Yep.
He did.
He did, because this man, Brian Debusk, if I had an idea, he would not. He'd go, "Oh, that's cool." He'd be like, I got the Pro Lift out there that I came up with the idea, and he put his mechanical engineered people on it to develop it because I just had the idea, and it's still sitting out there and it's patent, and people still were sending me letters wanting to purchase that thing.
It's a good idea.
It's all through Brian. The guy is like, so let's go back to you. I'm going to love on you some more.
I will just tell you this. I think maybe over the years, I've been the enabler of some of your insanity.
I loved it.
You've always had these ideas. You've always been this creative force of nature. And, all you have to do is show up and listen. And, when you've got a good idea, we try to capitalize on it.
And he's been retired a couple times. Once was in his 30s and when he lived in Chicago. And it was, I think his next door neighbor, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm ringing the bell wrong, patented the barcode.
the guy, this is absolutely true. When I lived in South Barrington, the guy just outside our subdivision and down the street from us his family held a lot of the original barcode patents. And the guy that was across the street from me, or just sort of one road over, really interesting guy. He was the original author of the solver application. If in Excel, you do the little solver add-in, he wrote that, and that was his claim to fame. But I enjoyed my experience in South Barrington. After I left GE,
because you did something with another fellow that we know, that you did something and sold it off
to General Electric.
Yeah.
Yes, we took our family business had written a software package it was like sort of like a QuickBooks for operating rooms.
Yeah.
And it helped the operating rooms manage the physician preferences and bill the patients and things like that. And we spun that out in 1999 and created a freestanding business called iPath. And we had a really good run for a few years. And actually, in our final years as an independent company, we actually captured 1 out of 3 orders in the entire operating room information space. And General Electric came in, said, "We only buy number 1, number 2. You're number 1 right now." And we did a deal within about 6 months.
And we could go back to like how he was brought back in, just like the Godfather, like came back in because, we talk about that. Like everybody that's retired, Pete Debusk, Big Jim Haslam, they go back and they go back to work. I think we're designed to be useful, as Schwarzenegger says in his documentary, that it is where it is. Now, going back to Brian we've diagnosed he's super smart. Now, Griff, you know this too, is he didn't do private school. He went to Hall's Has It.
He did.
He went to Hall's Has It. So how does somebody like that going to a public school and then go on to Vandy and like crush Academe Records?
I have fond memories of Hall's. I mean, I think at the time, Hall's did a good job. I mean, I remember, and I'll name names, Mr. Sharp, Mrs. Bohannon. I mean, there were teachers there that really made the connection. And I think that, Hall's at the time was still struggling a little bit academically. I mean, it was lagging behind the Webbs, the Farragut's, places like that. But I'm still really grateful for my Hall's experience. I mean, it was...
so how did you flourish from that?
You can find champions. You can find mentors there. And there were, again, some really fantastic faculty members there that I really enjoyed.
So you're still sold on public school could get you there?
I think public schools, there are pros and cons to both, but I certainly think that the right student in the right public school will flourish. My first year at Vanderbilt was a little tough. I had a little bit of an adjustment to get used to.
What was tough about it?
Well, the students were better prepared.
Weren't the private school people here say they prepared for college more?
Yeah, the private school kids and the ones that came from, say, like a Farragut, a big public school with lots of AP courses, things like that. But, the interesting thing about college is if you push through that first year, everyone's largely caught up by the end of the first year. So I would tell this to anyone who's high school age, who's going into college, I would be careful that first day, week, month, year in college, because comparing yourself to other people can be really dangerous. Because there may be someone there who isn't as smart as you, who isn't as hardworking as you, but who's better prepared than you. And it's very difficult when you're 17, 18, 19 years old to distinguish someone who really is more talented than you versus someone who's just a little better prepared.
Wow. Yeah. So you're academe at Vandy. So you're saying the first year was hard. Then you caught back up. I'm going to treat this like a sport program. And then when did you like grab a hold of it? And
well, my first year
I don't want to brag on you, but I want to brag on you, is you bypassed a certain amount to get to something else that's never been done.
Well, it was, again, Vanderbilt was really good to me, and I'm really grateful, because what happened was my freshman year was really difficult. I mean, I had a lot of catching up to do. But it also set a certain pace, and it set a certain expectation. I mean, I was extraordinarily hard. By the sophomore year, I still carried that work ethic over, but I had largely caught up with the other students. So I had a really charmed sophomore year. Now, mind you, I had not gone on a single date since I went to Vanderbilt, had not had a single sip of alcohol. I mean, I was an engineering nerd for those first 2 years.
Is that okay that I call you nerd?
I love the term.
God, I wish somebody called me a nerd.
I love the term nerd all day, every day. But when this is where Vanderbilt was really, really generous to me. At the beginning of my junior year, they let me enroll in graduate school. So I was actually an undergrad junior and a first year PhD student at the same time.
Told y'all.
And that was, it helped. I really think if I hadn't had that opportunity, and this is a little scary, so I might have actually down-regulated and said, oh, well, why don't I enjoy a year or 2 years or 3 years? So again, to Vandy's credit, they really helped me keep the momentum. And so I finished my undergrad on time, 4 years, but then I already had closer to 3 years worth of my PhD in. So I finished undergrad in 89, but then I finished my dissertation, defended it. The work was done in 92. So again, it was a charmed experience because I just went straight through. And that's another thing I'd recommend. I mean, if you can treat your college academic experience, it's a job. It's not a place that you're going off to have fun or to meet people and do all these other. I mean, if you treat it like a job and you get into those,
you don't see that anymore.
Yeah. You got to. I think getting into those getting the right work ethic and getting the right cadence, because it's so much easier to carry that on. It's just like the wood gym. Once we get in here and you get used to a certain pace, a certain rate, a certain expectation, it doesn't seem like a big deal because the guy to my left, the guy to my right's doing the same thing. He's doing the same sets, the same drills. Guess what? He threw up on legs day too.
That's so funny because the two new guys the last 2 days both threw up on leg days today, and they're like, and then you got the Marlows and all the other guys just going through it. Right. And yeah, wow.
Well, I think it's a function of what you're surrounded with. I think if you're surrounded by people who have a certain expectation and who have a certain work ethic, you're going to adopt that work ethic too.
Yeah, so the cream rises to the top is what you're saying. No?
Well, you can say the cream rises to the top. I think the beauty of this atmosphere, particularly your gym, is because you're surrounded by other people who are all working at the same intensity level, it tends to bring people up.
Got it.
And I'm a big fan of that because I think you're going to be the mathematical average of the 2 to 3 to 5 people who are around you. So if you're around people who are skipping sets or don't want to do legs day or whatever else, you're probably going to become one of those people sooner or later. And I think that's the real importance. When you come to a gym like this, it's the peer group is just as important, no offense, right, as the trainer. Yeah. Because I think it takes both.
Well, and yes, and for him to see that with his eyes and understanding that, I don't think the three of us could put that together, but it is true because it's when, my paperwork has like one-on-one emails, virtuals, and you really don't want one-on-one because of what you just said. You want the peer, the environment around, like more than the trainer, because the environment is what you're pulling from, correct?
Yeah. You draw from it. I mean, we're products of our environment.
Yeah. So with Vandy, did you have people, I think you mentioned a couple of people that were like your buddies that were as smart, close to smart that did you hang with?
We had a wonderful friend group.
Yeah.
And I'm in touch sort of off and on with some of them. But yeah, we had a really wonderful friend group. We were all.
Did you get pushed? Or were you the pusher?
You know what? No. I will tell you. I think we all pushed each other in different ways. I mean, I look at our group. We had some people who were very academic. I mean, one of them went on is now a full professor at Ohio State. One of them works in the medical device industry. He went on to do a master's at Case Western. One of them went on to medical school. He's a really high-profile physician in Indianapolis. One of them went back to their family business and has a huge civil engineering firm. But it's interesting because they all brought different things to the table. It was a wonderful group, and I was really grateful to be a part of them.
And didn't your daughter go there?
My daughter went to Vanderbilt. She transferred out about a year and a half into Vandy, mm-hmm. went back to UT, then went on to graduate school at Brown.
Wow.
And then went to the Mayo Clinic, became a physician, and she's doing her residency now in Florida.
Somebody pulled her up and showed me her Instagram pictures. Are you kidding me?
She's wonderful.
And super smart, gorgeous. I mean, but I remember this analogy is, correct me if I'm wrong how it went. She went from public to web and then back to Bearden, where you went, Griff. And I asked you, and you said, well, what was happening in the private school, and we're not mentioning throwing anything out. We're just saying, like, it's such a small class that they wait for everybody to be on the same page, where in public you just accelerate, you get it or you don't get it. And she was waiting around where it's like you go swim in the deep end, and she excelled. Is that correct?
She was. It wasn't a good fit for her. And again, I think there's a place for public and private, but it wasn't a good fit. And it was interesting because she had a somewhat similar experience when she went from Vanderbilt back to UT, and then on to Brown. I think she went through some of that too. She's been weaving in and out of private and public institutions for a while.
Yeah. And then everybody, somebody was telling me about Adam. He's a doctor
Adam, that's about my brother.
Yes.
He's a physician here in Knoxville now.
He's in Knoxville?
He works at UT Medical Center. Adam Debusk is his name. He's actually a neuro-ophthalmologist. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's one in Nashville, one in Atlanta. And he was the first. I mean, Knoxville now has them. And I will, just for your listeners out there, that's for people who have really complex neurological conditions. A neuro-ophthalmologist is the way to go. So, if you're an MS patient,
can you explain it to me, please?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you. His typical patient is going to be someone, say, with chronic multiple sclerosis.
Okay.
So you could have an attack at any time. You've already lost some function. These people will get, say, a tumor on their optic nerve or something. I mean, this is a very delicate, medically complex case. That's really what he specializes in. We're super proud of him. I mean, he has fantastic work ethic, and is just one of the most upstanding people. I don't know if you've seen him lately either. He looks like he's been chiseled out of a block of marble.
Adam Debusk is Brian's younger brother that came in here to train at 13 or 14, and he wanted to start Olympic lifting, and he took off. It was amazing. Yeah, he's in that picture.
There, right?
Yeah, he's right there. He took off with it and became junior Olympic champion. And for me to receive my level 2 Olympic certification, you needed to coach one. And I had just one. And we went to this big meet that had all these teams. And I swear to Debusk, I felt like Mr. Miyagi with the Karate Kid. I was just sitting in the corner just nodding, because you have to go up or down in weights and whatever. And everybody was coming over to him like, what team are you out of? He's like, I'm not having a team. I'm with that guy.
I love it.
But he's a wood jimmer guy that oh my gosh. And he got so into it that he wouldn't get on your nerves because he was just so thirsty for knowledge, and you understood that.
He was intense. Gosh, was he 13 maybe?
He was 13 or 14.
14 he started.
When he was 14 years of age, guys, and Ben, now that you're lifting with Ashlyn in here and understanding the squatting, and Griff, you understand, of course, Debusk does, Brian does. When he was 14 years old at 192 pounds, maybe 14, 15, no more than 15, he had a front squat of 407 in a rack position. And I was like, I got one. Yeah. Like, this guy's going to be Olympic champion because of how Olympic lifters, and he knows this from Kenny and Westside Barbell and everything I've introduced to Busk to, it's not powerlifting. It's not AC/DC music and slapping people across the face before they go. Olympic lifters are all highly college educated. Most of them, because they have to think through these progressions and movements. And Adam had it. And you knew that just from working out. We know this. And Brian's been around with this business so much. I mean, the guy's been with me when hey, we want to start this in Nashville. Hey, how about a sports agency in South Carolina? And he was with me on everything. I was still, to this day, I'm still thinking those things. But Adam had that type A that you knew he was going to go on and do great things. But I thought he was in Pittsburgh for a while.
No, he was in Philadelphia. He was at the Wills Eye Clinic, and then he left Wills. I mean, Wills, best eye institute in the world, probably. But he left, and now he's back in Knoxville.
Oh, your dad's got to be super pumped.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're all happy he's back in town.
And is he married and kids?
He's married. His wife, Stephanie, and 2 beautiful daughters.
How old is he?
Gosh, I would 37, 38, probably 38.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. I think one of the other things with Adam, what really helped him, you caught him early, And I remember even the early days, he learned how to do all the lifts correctly just from day one.
Technician, the best lifter. And then when it's just like the Debusk blood, it has to be. I know your mother's very smart. We talked about that. It's like Pete's one way and then Mom's the other way because it's when he was done, he was bored with it. He was done. He was like, I achieved it. I'm done. Now let's go on to powerlifting. So I don't know of anybody out there in the country that switched from Olympic lifting to powerlifting because Brian knows. And when I refer to Brian, Brian is like a Chad Pennington to me. I've thrown him into every gauntlet and discipline of training. Everything, powerlifting, Olympic lifting. I've had his hands duct taped behind his back running stadium stairs at Bearden. I mean, the things that we would think about.
I still have the scar to prove it. I don't know if you remember.
I don't.
We were. Oh yeah. You should recognize that.
Is that my scar?
That's Charlie's scar. We were out at Bearden. This was years ago, decades ago. We were out at Bearden running stadiums, and what Charlie used to love to do was he'd take your hands out of it one way or the other. So you couldn't really pump, and he put a weight vest on.
I still do it. And
you're out there doing. I'll tell you what. It's a great exercise. Well, my hands got free, and we were bounding stadiums one day. This was out here at Bearden, and as I was bounding one of them, my knuckle caught the edge. If you see the Bearden Stadium, there's a little rough edge on every one of the seats. Just a little rough concrete edge from where they poured it. Well, my knuckle caught right on the edge of that. And what it did is it actually took about a dime-sized hunk of flesh, just cut it clean out of my knuckle. And if you have a cut that's deep enough like that, it doesn't really bleed. It bleeds on the edges, but you don't really see, you look at it and it just looks white. So I showed Charlie, I was like, man, I hit my knuckle. And I remember Charlie was like, oh, come on, you're a wisp, you suck it up. I mean, he didn't say it that nice, just suck it up. And then I remember I bent my finger, and as I bent my finger, this little piece of cartilage poked through the hole. And Charlie was about to throw up.
I'm about there now. Yeah, I'm about there. How do you remember that? That's amazing.
But it scarred up and healed over. But yeah, it was. Well, actually, when you see your cartilage pop through an opening in your knuckle, it leaves a impression.
Yeah. So I tried. Anywhere I was going, and Brian would go, okay, where are you going? I'm going to Columbus, Ohio. I'm going to go study with Louis Simmons at Westside Barbell. And then I'd come back and try all the things, the chains, the boards, the bands, everything. He had a Westside Barbell shirt. Kenny likes bench, thick back. We could say all the same things. Wide back. Kenny Patterson.
Kenny has a thick back. That was our motto for a whole lifting season.
Oh my God.
Kenny has a thick back.
Yeah, because I lifted with all these guys that you see on that Netflix documentary now, Westside versus the World. Yeah, we could go for an hour, 2 hours. It's crazy. So Brian, I mean, take us through. I still want to talk about you with just this because you're the Harrison Smiths of business. Yeah. You get out of Vandy, and your dad, which, God, if we had Pete on, we'd round out all my big boys in Knoxville. It'd be amazing to have Pete on, because Pete Debusk is the founder of DeRoyal Industries, yes. Right?
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this. I know he's from Podunk in Virginia and started something out of his garage. Was it the soft boot? Was it?
It's That's absolutely correct. He actually was from Rose Hill, Virginia. Technically, I was too. I mean, that's my first home was a 40-foot trailer in Rose Hill, Virginia.
No way.
But soon after that, we moved to Winston-Salem. So I didn't spend a lot of time there.
But you were born in Virginia?
Our whole family. Technically, I was born in Roanoke because we had to drive to Roanoke to have
Do they still have the stickers, Virginia's for lovers? Do you remember those?
You still see those on bumper stickers, yes. But no, I started, what family was out of Rose Hill, Virginia. The business itself started in our family garage. And it was basically just a little shoe. If you see these little shoes that cover plaster or fiberglass casts, so you can hop around with crutches. That business has shrunk considerably because now you wear the full-on walking boot, the cast replacement.
Right.
But back then, I mean, you look at the timeline, you're talking early 70s. Today's modern walker, the walking boot, really wasn't introduced until around 1985. So, it's the walking boots are certainly came well after cast shoes were popular.
And that's your dad's claim to fame? Is
Well,
that how
that
he got
was
started?
that was the initial product.
Right.
He and Paul Hodges got a patent on the product and really built a business around one product. But then over time, we added, we did clavicle straps and the cervical collars, things like that. So really just built out the orthopedics line. But it's truly very humble beginnings. I mean, we were, it was cash flow was always an issue. Facilities were always an issue. I still remember our first group purchasing agreement. This is where the hospitals band together and try to buy in as a collective group. I remember they were reluctant to give us a contract because they didn't think we could service the business. And I remember me, my mother, a bunch of people, we were all staying up all night folding empty boxes and putting them on the shelf so that during the tour the next day, they would see these shelves full of inventory. And Dad knew just which box to go to and open that would actually have a product in it. If he'd grabbed the wrong box, he would have shown air.
No way.
Yeah.
So you go through Vandy, and do you know at this point the Royal Industries is rocking?
We've hit our stride at several points over the years, and DeRoyal was in a boom in the early '80s. There were certain incentives. The market was designed a specific way where hospitals were moving out of the cost plus era and into the capitated or the prospective payment system, and it created some opportunities for us. So DeRoyal had a real boom, really going into the early '80s and throughout the '80s.
See, and what he does all the time is when you walk away from Brian, you walk away from certain people like this, you feel better about yourself, and he's educated you on something. So between sets, it wasn't just like show me your muscle, feel me your tricep. He was talking about his next trip and what they're trying to do, and we got this really interesting patent where it was mind blowing, but it was so thirsty for me. I actually missed that because you missed a part of what you weren't that he was putting in you. Does that make sense? Just like me ripping his knuckle off. You can't get that anywhere else.
You're not going to get that at Planet Fitness.
You're not going to get that with a super smart trainer. They would say that's not good. I should have been sued by him several times. So when you get out of Vandy, you go, okay, Dad, like Jimmy, I got my Jimmy Haslam and Mr. Haslam. I got my Brian Debusk and Pete Debusk. Did you know you were going to work for the company?
I wanted to. Yeah, we had cut a deal my junior year when I co-enrolled in grad school that I would come back to the family business, and I was grateful. It was a great opportunity. When I first came back though in '92, it was really as in an engineering capacity. I still lived in Nashville. I actually lived in Brentwood, which was outside of Nashville, and we started a temperature probes business. Basically, it was temperature monitoring business. And it's like esophageal stethoscopes, general purpose. Like if you go to have surgery, they monitor your temperature throughout the surgery. And we started zero sales. No acquisitions, no nothing. We started and we've built that business over really the last 30 years. And I was really excited because about 2 years ago, we hit 55% market share. We have just slightly more than half of the entire temperature monitoring market now. We grind about 2,000 thermistors, or 2 million thermistors a month in Costa Rica. So it's really kind of crazy.
Yeah, because wait a minute, him and Chris Fouts, my buddy that I had on from New Jersey that you met at your house, the Alabama game. You were so kind to have us to your tailgate party and up in the box and doing things. He lived in Costa Rica also. Like the cat just got up and bolted.
Yeah.
With the whole family.
Wonderful country, wonderful people. It's got a lot to offer.
Now, when you did the DeRoyal thing, I always talk to you about this, or you talk to me, and Ben, I think this will help you with what they do. In the surgery centers, you were like, okay, Chaz, because he would always dumb things down for me, which I got, which was so good because it was like, I think I just got smarter today.
Don't start.
It's so
Don't
awesome.
even start.
Don't you bring in a pack of surgical equipment that opens up, you work on them, then you dispose that. Tell me help me with that.
That was
It's a word.
It's custom procedure packs. We're a part of that's a pretty significant part of our business. We were there really in the birth of custom procedure packs, which was late '70s, early '80s, but It's basically a way to get everything you need to do a surgery. It can be procedure specific or even physician specific, but you unfold it on the back table and it establishes the sterile field, and it's a pretty important product to have, not just for convenience but also for patient safety. Because instead of trying to place all these items individually, you basically unfold the sterile field in front of you.
And everything's there.
And everything's there. And now, with the nursing shortages that are out there today, it's not even a luxury or safety feature anymore. It's just a necessity, because the nurses that you would have to use to pull those products just aren't there.
That's what I hear with the other doctors in here training, talking about the nurses, that you can't find them. Is that huge?
Nursing, it's switching hats for a moment. Obviously I serve as the vice chairman of Lincoln Memorial University.
Got it.
And, one of the things we're looking at right now is how do you meet all these unfulfilled nursing jobs. And
why is that? What happened?
I think it's a combination of factors. I think that nursing, first of all, we need to address nursing pay. Nurses were not paid enough for years. Now, there's been a lot to correct that over the last couple of years, so I think that situation's fixing itself. But when you look at nursing schools, 20, 30 years ago, hospitals trained their own nurses. You would go, say, to Halls High, you'd go to a vocational program, you would come out with your certified nurse assistant title, and then the hospital would help you get your LPN, you would get your RN, they would really oversee your education. Well, 20, 30 years ago, we decided, no, we need these nurses out of the hospitals and into 2- and 4-year universities. Well, now we've put them on these university cost curves. Before, their training was on the job, it was efficient, it was low cost. Now, they're paying university tuition. So they're not just learning clinical skills. I mean, they're reading Tolstoy and studying fine arts, and, there's a place for that. But to the extent that drives up the cost of education and constricts the supply of nurses, I think that's a problem. I mean, you could see where a college education costs so much, and nursing pay hadn't caught up with that. So it created this gap. The other thing that we're doing, and I think this is where LMU really shines, most nursing schools now are going to recruit from a 2 to 4 to 6 hour geography, and they're going to try to get the 3.7, 3.8, 3.9 students. Well, those students look a lot better on paper. They're a lot easier to educate, and they're a lot easier to get past the NCLEX, the licensure exam. So imagine though, you bring all these nurses in from all these geographies, and then you train them. Well, the vast majority of them go home. So you lose the ability to train, to recruit and train and retain local nurses. So the question you ask, and we're doing this in Chattanooga, we're doing this in Louisville, we're doing this in Tampa, Florida, not just at LMU campuses, we're partnering with health systems, and we're saying, look, we're going to recruit from a much smaller geography. You're probably going to have a 3.3, 3.2 GPA class, but the nurses that you help us train by providing this clinical support are going to stay. And I think that's a big part of the solution. Hospitals are going to have to get back into the business of educating nurses.
Wow. Yeah, because that's all Chewy and Steve Smith, Dr. Chip Johnson are talking about, is the nurse shortage.
Well, it is a huge problem. And the other issue, and again, this is why it's such a multifactorial problem. Now, a lot of the best nurses don't want to do bedside care. Now they want to go on and be nurse practitioners or certified nurse anesthetists or advanced practice mental health nurses. So, you're losing the sort of the lower end. I say lower end. You're losing the 3.2, 3.3 GPAs, and then the 4.0s. A lot of them who do make it into nursing school just simply see that as a waypoint, and now they want to go on to do an advanced practice nursing degree. So you're sort of losing nurses on both ends of the spectrum.
So what are they doing? How do they substitute the bedside manner that you don't get anymore?
Well, there's a lot of bedside nursing that there's simply no substitute for. So I think the problem is going to be we're going to have to increase the supply of nurses, and I think we can get part of the way there just by engaging those 3.2 to 3.4, 3.5s and expanding the pool. The other thing that I think is going to be helpful is letting hospitals, as they correct nursing pay with increases, but also allowing them to do, say, a 3-year program where the nurse can work down some of her student loans or some of her tuition by working for the hospital. So I think you're going to have to solve this really from both ends of the spectrum. The thing that concerns me is I still think there's another element here. I do think we're going to have to use immigration as a way to also increase the nursing supply somewhat.
What do you mean?
I think there are nurses in the Philippines, in Malaysia, in Taiwan, who would love to have an opportunity to work here, to participate in our way of life. And I think these are very bright, very motivated people. And I think this is where, using immigration strategically would be really good health policy.
I told you. Yeah, on GPA level, Brian, did you ever see anything in the threes?
Don't start. Don't start.
We have something in common. Either did I.
All the self-deprecating stuff. Chaz,
dude.
There's a lot going on there. I mean, we don't even talk about the fact that, you're trainer to the stars, but you're also sort of psychologist, psychiatrist to the stars too.
I'm a life coach.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Since mine's turned out so well. Confidence coach.
you say that, but you've handed out some really spectacular advice over the years.
I'm like my old man. I could give it, but I just can't take it. You know what I'm saying? My dad always gave great advice, and Brian's one of the few that have met my old man. Him and Mr. Haslam. Jimmy never got to, but Pete. All these people around me. I mean, the Lord has blessed me with. I mean, how did I fall into all this to where, I just I could go on with the sappy stuff that you don't like because you're a Scorpio, and I know Scorpios. My gosh, he's a Scorpio. I mean, he's with you, but this man, he could be in the Italian mafia too. He gets it. Like he's a black and white guy, and that's really my attraction towards him. One of the many is he's no nonsense. He'll. I mean, I'm telling you, he's the opportunities that. To be honest, and we talked about with the Penningtons, I wouldn't be where I am with the Wood Gym and wherever my name is without people, and foremost like a person like Brian Debusk and his whole family. Because the beauty of me is of what they do is they're like, okay, you're going to train me, and by the way, here's my whole plethora of family, and by the way, let's redo the weight room at the Royal, and by the way, Brian is so into health and fitness and how important it is we're going to put you on staff at the Royal. You come over certain hours, certain days a week, and you have a steady income. So when all these yahoos, and Brian knows this from every intern, and people want to do the business that they see you doing and go, oh, it's going to be that easy because I'm going to have a master's and PhD, and I'm just going to train pro athletes, and I'm just going to charge this much. And people like the Penningtons, the Busks, the Harrisons stick their head out and go, it's not that easy.
Well, I will tell you that, you mentioned the DeRoyal Gym. I hope you will come by there in the next few weeks. You put that gym in 1997. When you go in there today, it will be as you laid it out 30 years ago, or 25 years ago.
And Brian, to all the employees that he has, he gave the best amenities. I remember Pete and Brian were like, here's blank checks. Like, I want it like a university weight room with platforms and the handles. I mean, so much nicer than the Wood Gym. I mean, it's beautiful. And the tile in the locker rooms. And Brian made sure that I had a desk that was elevated higher than the floor. And I was there for people. Like, I'd float around the room, and everybody got a piece of Petrone, a trainer, or whatever, without the dime of it. He had a basketball court next to it. I mean, it's amazing. Now, you just reflect on these podcasts, B, and I say this every time, because I've had everybody live with me and train with me. And even when they live with you, you're chopping it up on the couch, the Josh Dobbs and the Leonard Fournettes and the T. Higgins and all these guys. They'll live with you, you eat with them, you laugh with them, you go out back, you watch TV with them. But when you do a podcast like this, and I think that's what makes me so thirsty and fulfills me so much, you get to just talk about stuff and know things from somebody that you never knew before, which I know a lot about you for sure, but still the sincerity of just chopping it up, because when we go out to eat, we're always fun and we're always ham and egging it. And especially in here, it's always, it's a blast, but just to sit back and reflect, been doing it 33 years. And when he said he got out of Vandy in 92, it was only 2 or 3 years after that this guy, this businessman body came to me, and I started my career with people like Brian, and I don't think people ever should forget where they came from, of how people like him started out. I could get all sappy, but it's almost there.
It's been a great ride. We met in '94, and it really has been a great ride because I have, and our whole family has enjoyed watching you succeed over the years. I mean, and I will tell you, it's, we're in. I mean, if you called me this afternoon and said, Brian, I got a crazy idea, I want to do A, B, and C, I'd drive by here on my way home from work, I'd pop in and we'd try to put something together.
And that's Brian Debusk. That's Brian Debusk. And I honestly, your name, I don't have to defend you at all in this town or anywhere else I go, because your name stands for a lot. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
It does. I never hear anything bad. Never. But everybody always goes.
Maybe I just don't get out enough.
He is, and the same thing he did. Fitness to him is something that is no other level. Same thing. You go to his house now, he started it. The Mike McHenrys, the Penningtons, the Heltons, the Luke Hoechavers, they made their weight rooms like how we trained. He pioneered it. Years and years and years, and probably 25 years ago in the Rolfus days. Yeah. Because Rolfus helped you set it up.
I remember so, yeah.
So Olympic platform, bumper plates, everything at his house. Brian it's 0 to 100. There's no, and I think that's why we get along so well is it's not black and white in anything. But I'll tell you a quick story, and I know everybody's got bold on the Saturday, and I can't believe the time you're giving to me, because if you think my time's worth a lot, where I always give you bust your balls on it, his time's worth infinity over my time. Okay, so we're at a restaurant here in Knoxville, and Brian and I'd always go out when we were married, our first marriages. We would always go out and have a great time. And I think because we're so opposite and so much alike in certain ways, we're out to eat at this restaurant, which Brian, again, backed the chef and did his thing as usual. He's always there for you.
Bruce
Bogart's one
That's
of
right.
the best chefs in the world. I mean, in my opinion, he could cook like nobody's business. He actually introduced me to him.
Yeah, he's gifted.
He's so gifted.
Remember how you met? It was over a clogged toilet.
No.
Yes.
How do you have a memory like that?
Okay. So Bruce has got a restaurant. This is when you were off of Kingston Pike.
Mohican Street.
Mohican. Mohican.
Right where Nama is.
Right where Nama is.
Yep.
And I remember you had your business there. He was a couple doors down.
Do you remember it was a Terrace Tap House? Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And he had his business, and it was just finding its legs.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me and he said, Brian, apparently this trainer a couple doors down, he spends no money on his facilities. I mean, it's just bare bones, and his toilet never works. So he's got all these athletes that come in to use my bathroom, and they clog the toilet for customers. Right. Tell him I don't ever want another customer, one of his guys in my restaurant.
I remember that. You broke bread with us. Wait a minute.
Well, we all got together. If I'm not mistaken, we all got together. We kind of got over the hump there. Mm-hmm. I think you invested a little bit more in plungers and some of the necessities. Back then, plunger was an investment for him. So we got him fixed on the plunger side. We got his guys knowing that we just can't go over there and blow it up.
Yep.
And then if I'm not mistaken, though, I think you did a deal with him with a food plan for your athletes.
Yep.
So
Albert Hainsworth and everybody go up and eat, and then I started training him.
Yes. Yeah, it actually turned into a really good business opportunity.
Yeah.
And I mean, your athletes eating Bruce Bogart's food.
I think it was like for $5 or $7 for lunch, and he had everybody up. I'm like, hey, Bruce, you might have to up the ante on that a little. I don't think you're making. He goes, I'm not making any money, but you know how we do. He's like, but yeah, we started training together and still keep in touch. Yeah. That's amazing. You got a memory like nobody's business. So we're up there. Eating dinner one night. Me, the wife's at the time, we're talking, the usual stuff, shooting numbers, degrees, the usual. And Jimmy has him, one of my other awesome clients, family clients that I've had for years, and just salt of the earth. He's there with his wife, and he comes over to the table after they got through eating and said hi to everybody. And Brian, when Brian's like me that way. If you see him out, it's like Brian Debusk is out. You know, because he's always on the go or at home. That's the way he is. In what I've known of him. So after that, they say hi to each other. Hey, Chaz, I'll see you tomorrow working out or whatever. So the next day or whenever I saw Jimmy again, he goes, hey, Charlie, before we start, can I talk to you for a minute? I'm like, yeah, Jimmy, what's up? What? I always, the typical Italian guilt. What I do wrong? Who's dead? If you get a phone call, who died, right? He goes, no, you didn't do anything wrong. He goes, I just got to ask you a question. Dee and I talked about on the way home. What the hell do you talk about with Brian Debusk at a dinner table? I thought it was the best. I mean, and he was like dead serious. I'm like, dude, we chop it up with like the Pythagorean theorem. We are on it. I mean, I'm giving this guy so many insights.
The right answer, if you could have just looked him dead eye and just said, mostly quantum physics. That's where you should have gone with it.
Now, okay, real quick story on this one too. Talking about, I do brag on him. You know that. We went to see a sports agency business in South Carolina. And we drove down there. He goes, okay, let's drive down and go see it. I'm entertained by it, whatever. Well, let's go see it. And everybody, this is when Brian was probably in his Lou Ferrigno, Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbo stage. He was jacked. I mean, he had skin. He would always lift up and go, you think I'm fat? And you could pinch it, remember? Go, Chaz, I got to get rid of this. And there was nothing. I mean, he was the Harrison Smith with size. Okay. It was that ripped. So I'm like, oh gosh. And he had the polo shirt on and like this shirt, he had this shirt and he had these at least 20-inch guns sitting out here. Right. And I'm like, Brian, they're going to take you for a meathead, bro. But I'm not going to say anything. We're just going to go in there and wing it, because I've been profiled my whole life. So it's like, got it. So we pull in. I think I was driving. I think you said, you drive. I'll treat everything, whatever. We got it. So I think I don't like to drive, Charlie. I want to do work or sit here. I think that was the case. Anything for him. I'm like, you got it. So we get in this board meeting. They have this big board, right? And, we're looking at all these proposals and numbers and, like, I'm just a talent, I'm just there, like, whatever. And they got up to try to explain the numbers. And Brian Debusk goes, yeah, wait a minute. I think I can help you on that. Stood up, and he looked like Goodwill Hunting. I don't know if everybody's seen that movie. Okay. He starts going, and everything's flexing on his body. His traps are out to his ears. And I'm just sitting back like a proud dad or like, go get him, boy. Like, go get, like, I knew it was going to come at some point. And then he looked at the numbers and was like, it's upside down. It's not right or whatever. And I do remember this. We drove home and as God is my witness, on Mike Petrone's grave, we went through Chick-fil-A. He ordered 72 chicken nuggets and a gallon of sweet tea. It
was unsweetened.
My bad.
Lemonade.
Yeah, sugar's the devil.
Sugar's the devil. But it helped to wash the 72 nuggets down. Yeah, you know what? That was a fun day because they had taken.
Do you remember that?
I vividly. They had taken sort of some.
I think what's his name was represented by him. Heath.
Yeah,
Benedict.
I think Heath. That's right. I think the monster was with these guys. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had been very generous with how they were valuing their company, and had taken a few shortcuts.
You had to, but the way we walked in, and the people are meeting us and going, I'm like, oh God, they could do it to me. I get it, but I'm like, you guys have no clue who I brought here for this. So that's my story. And Brian, I'll let you go, man. But I mean, if we could do, Harrison Smith wants to do another one. I mean, we should have like a roundtable discussion when Harry gets in and get everybody together. But you mean the world to me, man. I mean, I don't forget. I was going through a tough time in divorce, and I called on this man for something, and he was like, "What do you need?" And I was like, "I need this," and he's like, "You got it," and I was like, I'll have to work it off because I'm going through a tough time. He's like, you got it. Like, no questions asked. He's that guy. I mean, he's much more than that guy, but that guy. And I love you, man. You're like a brother to me. And thanks so much for coming in and doing the show for me. And I hope I didn't embarrass you much at all. I tried to keep the words to it, but the toilet was real because Brian's like, dude, we got a problem. Like, Bogarts looks like Shrek. Okay. And he is angry, and he's an angry Jewish man. Right. And he was like, this guy's angry at you. And he's giving me looks down there or whatever. But then when we broke bread all through Brian, it was like love at first sight. And it was awesome. So
Became a good partnership.
I mean, big thanks. And I wish everybody well. And I can't wait to see Adam. I'd like to get his number and see it.
I'll send it to you.
I'd love to see him.
And again, thank you for having me on. It's great. And to your earlier point, it is just wonderful to reminisce like this. I've just love you over the years and cannot wait. I need to come back in some.
Just once, and no charge. I don't need it anymore. Okay.
No. I always pay my bills.
Dude, no, he doesn't pay bills. He front loads bill. I wouldn't be where I am with one of this cat. Like, there's some cats out there, but Brian was, because we talk about, Brian knows the business model. It's not all pros. And I'm telling you, when we were going to move it to Nashville with Sasha and his dad, this man flew over from Knoxville to Nashville. Okay. And I'm like, it's a weekend. So I'm like, I got my boys so I could do my thing. Like, we're in Nashville, Broadway, whatever. He's successful because he didn't do his thing. He flew in. I'm at the bar down the lobby. And he's like, where's the packet? And the packet's Sasha. Because, again, Sasha and his dad didn't know who I was bringing. It's like the cage animal and the circus act going, go get him, boy. Right? Like, it's that way. I'm bragging on him again. And I don't mind because it's awesome. It was that big. I'm like, I'm not going to do anything with this. So he goes, okay, you stay down here, do what you're going to do. I had company with me. And we're down there just appetizers, drinking, whatever. And he came back down. He's like, all right, we're ready to go eat. And I'm like, yeah, B, that was like an hour and a half. He's like, yeah, no, I read the whole thing. We're good to go. Like, I got it. Like, we'll put some questions out there at dinner. And again, it was, you just in awe when you watch this man of like how, it's the same thing we've talked about to where he is in life. It's because he does all the right things. So thank you for that too. That was awesome. And man, I love it. It just feels good. Just the feeling that stuff at 55 now. My birthday was a couple of weeks ago. You're a year ahead of me. Be 56.
I'm about 7-8 months ahead.
Yeah.
I'll be 56 in October.
And you graduated high school in
85. I graduated
80. Okay, yeah. And now look at us, just two winners at a table in the woods. Thank you, man.
I love you, Chaz.
I love you, man. Thanks.